Good morning, Headmaster, Mrs. Lee, colleagues, and boys. I am Ms. Choi, and I teach liberal studies. It's an honor to have this opportunity to share some of my thoughts with you this morning. In liberal studies, we often emphasize the importance of applying different concepts in analyzing social issues. One of the commonly discussed concepts is justice. Now, I'm not sure what would you think of when it comes to this term. Perhaps superhero stories in which men and women are gifted with superpower to battle the force of darkness. Perhaps the judiciary system that judges and punishes people. Or perhaps the Bible verses like the Lord's command to act justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. To many, justice is a big fancy word. As I ponder on its meaning, I recall my memory of something happened to me some years ago. So one night I had dinner with a friend. We chatted for the whole evening, and when we were done, it was already quite late. So since my home was within walking distance, so naturally I walked my friend to her minibus stop. Okay, so this is actually the bus stop. So there were 12 people waiting in line. Okay, we specifically counted because there are 16 seats on the minibus. We want to make sure that my friend could get a seat. So we lined up behind a tall, big guy here and waited for like 20 minutes. And finally, a minibus came. So people in line ahead of us just board the minibus one by one. And when it's my friend's turn to board the minibus, suddenly, 4 big guys swooped in. Okay, they were actually not bold, but this is what I randomly found on the internet. So they were actually in their 40s or 50s. They were actually very muscular. They were tall, and they had tattoos on their arms. So apparently, these line cutters were friends of the big guy standing in front of us. Now, what would you do? It's late at night. If you miss this bus, you will probably have to wait for another 20 minutes or so. Okay, perhaps you would remain silent and wait for another minibus. Perhaps you would call an Uber for your friend. Perhaps you would ask the guys nicely to go to the back of the line. Or perhaps you would just ditch your friend, right? Well, I did none of these. Actually, for a few seconds, we didn't know what to do. So neither did the people behind us step up to say or do anything. And nobody wanted to mess with those guys. Now, because of that, anger quickly built up in me. And I kind of lashed out at those guys. Now, okay. Just imagine that I was really, really angry, okay? So you should know that I'm not that kind of person who like to confront people. No, I hate arguing, and I like being nice to people. I like being liked by people. So that's why my friend was really shocked to her core as she looked at me yelling at those guys like a crazy woman. So I confronted them like, hey, you shouldn't cut the line. 喂，你唔應該插隊喎。 Okay, and then those 4 guys, 5 guys actually, turned around, stared at me for a few seconds, and ignored me. Now it's actually normal, right? There were like 5 of them, and to them, me and my friend were just like hobbits. So that made me even angrier, and I almost yelled at them saying, this isn't fair to the people behind, blah, 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 blah. And one of them was obviously quite irritated by me and respond in rude language that I cannot quote directly here. And actually, I didn't quite remember the details of the fight. I only remember my hands and my legs were actually shaking. Well, I was actually lucky that the whole thing wasn't filmed and put online. Otherwise, I would be known as 小巴阿姐. I was also lucky that the line cutters eventually gave up arguing with me and got off the minibus. And at that time, I'm not even sure did I do the right thing or the stupid thing. It all happened too quickly. Now, I was actually panicking at that time. So after the bus had departed, I was gradually overwhelmed by fear. I began to freak out and walk really quickly home. Okay, so for fear that the big guys might beat me up or something, luckily they didn't. It's really 又要威又要戴頭盔. Okay, so somehow this may be the feeling when we are in the face of injustice or unfairness. We feel very angry, but at the same time, we are also terrified that our interests would be jeopardized if we step up to say or do anything. Let me quickly quote one more story here, the story about Rosa Parks. You have probably already heard of this lady. The story setting was also on a public transport. In the 1950s, racial segregation was commonly and lawfully practiced in America. So basically, white people had priority in everything. For example, for this laundry, they only do the laundry for white people. And actually, there were signs used to show non-whites where they could legally walk, talk, drink, rest, or eat. So segregated facilities extended from white-only schools to white-only graveyards. On public transport like the bus, okay, the white people could sit anywhere, but the non-whites were confined to a colored section at the back. Okay, if you're not white people, you have to go to the back of the bus. So one day, Miss Rosa Parks, she was actually African American. She boarded a bus and took a seat in the front of the black section. So as the bus was filling up, the driver asked her to move so that a white passenger could have her seat. Okay, so she actually refused to give up her seat, and the police arrested her. She was put into jail later. So in an interview that took place some years later, Ms. Park explained her action. She said, "People always say that I didn't give up my seat because I was tired. No, the only tired I was tired of giving in." She's tired of discrimination and racism. She took a stand by sitting down. Well, this actually triggered a 381-day boycott of the bus system organized by the Reverend Martin Luther King. Ultimately, with the effort and sacrifices of many more, the segregation law was abolished in the 1960s. Of course, my story of minibus could never be compared to Ms. Park's story, but the point is, there will be time when we are faced with injustice and unfairness. We will be given the chance to make choices in how to react. Sometimes, to do the right thing, it would look incredibly stupid. Now, we are lucky that we're in a society with legal protection of our basic rights. And of course, our current system is far from perfect. But even having the ideal system or institution is not enough to make justice happen. Justice can only take place when individuals are willing to care and act for the welfare of others. It's always about the choice of each individual. Justice is not just about having the right system. It's a quality of a community. It's true that we are living in a world full of injustice, and it's probably true that we can't make any big changes easily. But dear boys and dear colleagues, please do not forget that we always have the room to do something. We can make choices that can make impact on the life of others. Now, you don't have to be a social activist. You don't have to be a legal expert. You don't have to be muscular, good at speaking. No, I'm not any kind of those. But I realized that the most essential thing is not to take injustice for granted. Don't get used to it. For example, here at school, when you see someone being bullied simply because they're different, don't ignore it. You are a part of this community. You have the responsibility to keep this a respectful, fair, and inclusive place. A place that each of us will not be afraid to be who we are. A place where people can truly explore their potentials and thrive. Justice, to put it simply, is to maintain fairness in the way people are dealt with. I believe that it won't happen overnight because it's a learning process. I do hope that we can all learn together and to make DBS and our society a just and fair place. Thank you.